Netflix and are human and the year is 2016, odds are you've probably seen Stranger Things. And odds are you are just as obsessed with it as I am. This ultimate Stranger Things video is a collab with one of my Next Face Awards top 6 besties, Raw Beauty Christy, who is our insanely scary Demogorgon in today's video. She is doing 31 days of Halloween on her channel right now, so pop on over to her channel to check out some sickeningly awesome beauty, body paint, and SFX looks, especially if you're Team Demogorgon. For those of you who are Team 11, this is definitely the video for you. I am calling this video the ultimate cosplay guide because we're going to go over everything you need to become whichever version of 11 from season 1 is your faves. We're going to have hair and makeup and costumes and everything, so this is going to be a long one. Here is a quick time code guide for your reference if you are just here to see one specific costume tutorial. Otherwise, let's dive right on in. Let's start off with the base makeup that is going to be used in all of these looks. The easiest makeup option for this cosplay is to wear no makeup at all. 11 doesn't wear makeup and you don't need to either, but if you want to, just stick to the basics. I start by putting in some big brown circle lenses, then I put primer all over my face to smooth out my skin and fill in those pores and all that good stuff. Prep your face for foundation. Then I use a liquid foundation and blend it in with a beauty blender. And remember to bring your foundation down onto your neck to help it blend. Then I use a lighter color concealer around my eyes and to highlight some parts of my face. And this is the face of someone who got way too much concealer. Whoops! Blend it in and then powder the whole face to set all of the product. Super duper basic. 11's brows aren't filled in or anything, so I am just using a brow mascara to darken up my natural brows a bit, but I don't want them to look too manicured. After I did that, I decided my brows were still too arched, so I added a little bit of color above the front of my brows to straighten them out some. Then I just used a little bit of brown mascara to make them look a little bit more feminine, but definitely go easy on this step. Adding too much big thick mascara can make it look more glam than we are going for. Remember, super simple. Then I just add a little brightening eyeliner and our face base is done. But another staple that's important for all of 11's looks and her origin story is the 11 tattoo on her arm. Hers is on her left arm, but for obvious reasons, I will be doing mine on my right arm. You would not see it on my left arm. So using a matte black liquid liner, I draw 4 little lines across my wrist. Then I add horizontal lines to make them into the numbers 0, 1, 1. Her tattoo is not super crisp and clear and clean, so to age it a little bit, I'm going to be using a makeup wipe. Just using a little bit of pressure, run it over the eyeliner. You don't want to press too hard because we're not actually trying to remove the eyeliner, just to pull up little bits of it and make it look a little bit faded and a little bit messier. Once you're happy with how much it has been faded and aged, use the makeup wipe to clean up the smeared eyeliner around the numbers. And then we have a nice aged looking, kind of like stick and poke sort of style. It's kind of got like a prison tattoo kind of vibe. So yeah, that's our 11 tattoo. And that concludes the base makeup for each of these looks. I'll do specifics about where to go from here depending on which look you're doing at the end of each corresponding costume section. Okay, time for that signature hair. So I've got 3 options for you today. 1, shave your head. I will not be demoing that for you today. I am pretty dedicated to cosplay, but I'm not that dedicated, which brings me to options 2 and 3, bald cap or wig. Each of these choices have their fair share of pros and cons, so let's talk a little bit about that. First, we have applying a bald cap and then stippling a short shaved haircut on top of the cap. The major pro about this method is that you can make the hair super short and have a skin tone showing through the hair, but then again, 11's hair really isn't this short. It's kind of in between the length of our bald cap hair and our wig hair, so just pick whichever way works best for you. Also, another pro, in general, bald caps are going to be cheaper than wigs. For me, the cons of bald caps outweigh the pros, but it is all about preference. They are an option and you may dig them, and that's why we're talking about them. There is no denying that they are harder to apply than simply popping on a wig. Bald caps require some skill, some practice, and a lot of patience. Applying a bald cap by yourself isn't impossible, but getting the back of your head and neck done is a lot easier if you have someone to help you, and speaking as someone with no friends, I consider that a major con. In addition to those cons, it's harder to be expressive with your face because wrinkling up your forehead can show the seams of the bald cap. This sucks for me because that's a face I make a lot. You can also get bald cap wrinkles in the base of your neck if you move your head around too much. Let's see, painting hair can be hard, so if you don't really nail it, it can look very unrealistic. And finally, you need to be conscious of what products you're using, particularly if you have allergies to latex or its substitutes. Okay, so our other option is wearing a wig. Shaving a wig down to a buzz cut isn't as simple as it seems, but a full tutorial about how I made this wig is coming up next. Of course, I am all about the wig life, so for me, this one is my top choice. The pros are that it has a realistic hair texture, it's easy and fast to put on when you need it, you can wear it all day with no problems, it doesn't restrict your facial movement in any way, and finally, you can re-wear a wig as many times as you want. Cons are that you don't get any skin showing through like you would with a super short shave, shaving a wig down this short requires a long prep time, and it's more expensive. So, shaving a wig seems like it should be super simple, right? Like, just cut all the hair off. In some cases, sure, but in most cases, no. Wigs that aren't designed to be buzzed likely aren't automatically set up in a way that is conducive to it. The way wefts work on a wig is that the hair on one weft lays down over the weft underneath it and covers up and fills in the gaps between the wefts. It's like a curtain of hair, so if you cut the hair off, you'll be revealing tons of holes in the wig. You follow me? So the way to get around that is to add more wefts so the gaps in between each weft are smaller. So to shave this wig, we are first going to be combining two wigs to make one big, thicker wig. Because this short wig has a really thick top, like it's full of wefts already, look how thick this is, we are going to be taking wefts from this long wig and adding them into the base of the shorter wig. To do this, we are going to deconstruct the long wig, harvest the wefts and the lace, and glue them into the short wig. To start the deconstruction process of this wig, you'll need a seam ripper or tiny scissors. Wefts go across horizontally and are attached to these vertical stretchy bands that run through and create the shape of the wig cap. They are attached with just a little thread, so jump right on in there with your seam ripper and cut the thread that is holding the weft in place. Follow the weft around and detach it from each strap, and then once it's all freed up, remove the weft from the wig. I realized it was super hard to see what I was doing, so to clear it up and make everything easier to see, I'm cutting the bottom of the cap off. Just cutting it around the base. There, that's better. Let's see that again. Taking your weft, you'll find the little thread that is holding it onto the strap. Stick the seam ripper in between the thread and the strap and pull it to cut the thread. Cut the thread anywhere it's attached to the cap. For projects involving hair and wigs, I usually put the ball side of the seam ripper up because the ball can sometimes get caught in the hair. Repeat this over and over again until you've harvested all the wefts you need. At this point, the wig is pretty well destroyed, so you might as well harvest them all and save some for a later project if you don't end up using them all for this one, but I am going to add as many as possible to our 11 wig. After I got part of the way up, I decided I wanted to keep the lace front of this wig and use it on the new wig. So I cut along the edge of the cap, leaving plenty of room to sew it onto the cap of the new wig. Now back to harvesting those wefts. To get around the whole harvesting thing, if this looks too tedious for you, or if you don't have a wig you're willing to destroy, you could buy hair extensions by the pack that come in one long strip and then cut them up to the length that you need. Once you get to the top of your cap, depending on your wig, you have some options. If it's a skin part, your prob's done harvesting. But if it's lace like this one, you may be able to get a few more wefts out of it. These wefts are sewn all the way across, so just continue to remove the thread with your seam ripper all the way around the top of the wig. Okay, so now we have a big pile of hair. These are all individual wefts here, and we have our wig that we are going to be sewing them into. For this part of the process, I'd recommend a styrofoam head, straight pins with balls on the end of them, a comb, hair clips, and tacky glue. Like before, the base of this wig is just really hard to film, so I'm going to start the demo a few wefts up, but just know that you should really start at the very bottom weft and work your way up from there. So to attach the new hair into this wig, we are going to part the hair along a weft, put a dot of tacky glue onto the strap, and stick your weft onto it. You could hold it there for hours while this stuff completely dries, or you could shove a straight pin through it to hold it there for you while you move on, do the rest of the wig, go watch a movie, take a nap, eat, live your life, and come back the next day to a fully dried wig. This process is basically the opposite of the deconstruction section. We are going in and reattaching the weft to each vertical strap. I use tacky glue because it's a flexible glue, which makes it good on stretchy material like these straps. You can also hand sew the wefts onto the straps if you'd rather do that. Sewing has a longer labor time, but the wig will be wearable as soon as you're done sewing it, while gluing has a shorter labor time, but you have to wait for the glue to dry, so you can't wear it right away. When I reach about a third of the way up, I start doubling up and adding 2 wefts in between each original weft. I counted the harvested wefts, counted the number of wefts on my base wig, and I figured it out from there where I could start doubling them up. Make sure you have enough before you start doubling because you don't want to run out before you reach the top. When combining wigs with the end goal of shaving them down to nothingness, the length of the original hair does not matter. As you can see with this wig, we have totally different lengths, but since we're cutting it all off anyway, it makes no difference whatsoever how it looks right now. If you are combining 2 wigs that you are intending to keep long, it may be something to consider, but for this shaved look, having 2 wigs that are the same color is more important than a similar length. So now that we are up at the top, remember we can stop here because the top of this wig is already super thick and doesn't need any additional wefts. If your base isn't as thick on top, continue to add more all the way up. So now that our wig looks just like oddish, step back and let it dry for several hours. I usually just leave it overnight. Once it's dry, go ahead and pull all of the little pins out. So now it's time for the most satisfying or the most horrifying part, depending on how you feel about hair. I love this part. Take some scissors and cut away all of the length from the additional wefts. It doesn't have to be pretty, but I do try to keep all of the hair that I'm cutting off in pretty long pieces in case I want to recycle them for something else. Once all of the long hair is out of your way, we can cut it short. You can use scissors to just go around and cut it really short. You can, it just takes a while and can be tough to get it even, but it works if that's what you got. Conveniently, I already have hair clippers just laying around my house, so when you're shaving hair, especially wig hair that will never grow back, you want to start off longer than you intend for it to be and then work your way shorter and shorter. Especially when you are doing this additional wefting thing and you don't really know how short you can take the hair. I start off with a 4, which is ½ inch, and shave the whole head, and then realizing I can definitely go shorter, I jump to a 2, which is a 1/4 of an inch, again shaving the whole thing. And then feeling gutsy over here after seeing that I have even more wiggle room, I go down to a 1, which is 1/8 of an inch. Using scissors, I cut off the hair around the edges and clean up any areas that need attention, like this neckline right here. Now to attach the lace front that I took off of our longer wig, I am going to be hand sewing it along the front of the cap. Using thread that is the same color as your wig, keep the needle going through those thicker bits of the wig instead of just going through the lace. This will make sure that it's held on there really, really good. I start in the middle and work my way out to make sure the lace stays centered and positioned how I want it. Follow the shape of the wig cap that you're sewing it onto. And then you're going to cut off whatever you don't need, like these little straps right here. Then I'm going to blend it into the base wig by shaving all of the hair nice and short. Adding lace like this to non-lace wigs isn't always going to look seamless. If the cap is really thick and then you add another thick layer to it, it can look really obvious. If the hair on the lace is a different color or texture than your base wig, it can also be obvious. If it doesn't work out or you don't like how it looks, you can use your seam ripper to cut the thread and the lace should come right off and you're right back to where you were before adding it on. No harm done. Okay, so then I decided to go even shorter with this hair. No guard. I started with the top of the wig where it's the thickest and it worked great. So I tried a little patch in the back and to my surprise, it also worked pretty well. So I shaved the whole wig with no guard. It's madness. Okay, the wig is done. So all you gotta do is put it on. And to put the wig on, I'm just gonna toss it on like a regular wig. I put my hair up in a wig cap, display this sweet shaved head for a second, and then pull it onto my head. The hairline of this wig doesn't really match up with Eleven's hairline, so I decided to stipple a new hairline on by using liquid lipsticks, brown mascara, and eyeliner, which works since the hair is short anyway. After applying product to a sponge, just dab it around in the shape of her hairline. Using slightly different shades for different products will help give it dimension and make it look more realistic because your hair isn't uniformly one color like all the way through, you know? I add this product way up higher into my hair than you'll actually see it because you can see through the lace and you want to make sure the area under the lace is all covered in brown so that you don't get a naked patch of skin peeking through the lace. Then I apply spirit gum, wait for it to get tacky, and then stick the edges of the wig to my head. Be careful about getting spirit gum in your hair, which is a real possibility when putting a wig this close to your hairline. Make sure you have spirit gum remover or a remover like isopropyl myricate, which gets everything off, to avoid pulling your hair out, which would be no good at all. Hold the wig on there until the spirit gum has completely dried. Maybe have a little dance party, a sing-off, just wait it out. Okay, then add any finishing touches, extra hairline details, whatever you want, and then your shaved head wig is all done. You can reuse this wig for any character with a shaved head. Think about the cosplay possibilities. They are endless. Okay, enough hair, on to costumes. The first outfit we are going to cover in this video is Eleven's signature look, and is probably her outfit that we will see the most of this Halloween. It is a good costume because it doesn't take a ton of work to toss it together, and most of the pieces can be found at a thrift store, so it's pretty cheap. The first thing you'll need for this outfit is a pink dress. I found mine at Goodwill for $4. When I was prowling the thrift racks for Eleven's dress, I wasn't expecting to find a dress that looks just like hers, especially with Halloween right around the corner. Instead, I looked for a dress that was just the right color, and I ended up with this. I shortened the dress, altered it to fit me, and gave the top section some texture to look more like Eleven's dress. Of course, the level of detail that you want to do is totally up to you, and none of those alterations are at all required to make this character. Really, any light pink dress should get the point across that you're Elle. If you really want it to be spot on, but you don't want to do any alterations or crafting and have a ton of money to spend, you could just buy her dress online for around $100, like this Eleven dress from Melon Hopper. Next, you will need a white collar. For this, you can use a detachable collar like the one I have here. You could use a white collared shirt underneath the dress, or something like a dickie. So I just put the collar over the dress, and then I'm gonna sew just the center into place so that it doesn't slide around but is also easy to remove later by cutting that one little thread. And just so you know, her collar is rounded and it doesn't have these little dips in it, just in case you're shooting to be suits accurate. I know my jacket will be covering that part of the collar, as well as the lack of sleeves on the dress, so I say, whenever you can use what you already have and make it work, go for it. For the jacket, grab any navy windbreaker from your local thrift store. Mine was $6. Now, shockingly enough, because I already had the shoes and the wig, these socks were the most expensive part of this whole costume. But because Eleven is so popular right now, this particular yellow and green color combo of striped tube socks is surprisingly hard to find. I found these socks on Amazon for $20, but a cheaper DIY is to get white tube socks and use green and yellow tape, ribbon, or fabric paint to create the stripes yourself. Now, without some white high tops, hers are all white Converse All-Stars, aka Chucks, and conveniently enough, I already had those exact shoes. But any white shoes, like high tops, will be just fine. Some bonuses you can add to this look are a blonde wig, Eleanor style, a black watch to make sure you can meet all your buds at the telephone poles at 3:15, Eggos in case your girl gets hungry, nom nom nom, or even your very own sensory deprivation goggles. Again, another thing I strangely already had. YouTuber life. Thanks for the goggles, scientist me. The makeup for this is just a dirty face because the kid is all over the place in this dress. I used a few different shades from the Highlight and Contour Pro palette from NYX to create the dirt smudges, sticking mostly with the darker browns. If you're dirtying up your face, you should probably dirty up the clothes too, just so that it all goes together, and then you just top off the look with a bloody nose, and you're all done. Next up, let's do Eleven's look from Hawkins Lab. To create this cool headgear that Eleven wears during the experiments at the DOE, totally from scratch, we are going to get super crafty with the supplies we have here, plus a styrofoam head, straight pins, and some spare fabric or a beanie. To start off, get some clear vinyl from a fabric store. Taking something roundish, like this lid, trace out 2 circles on the vinyl with Sharpie and then cut them out. If you have any marks of Sharpie left on your circles, you can use rubbing alcohol to remove the ink. Now to set up our workspace, these styrofoam heads are usually a little bit smaller than actual human heads. The male styrofoam head is closer to the actual size than the female, but it is still a little bit small. So to make it closer to the dimensions of your head, measure your head with the wig on first, then wrap fabric around the styrofoam to thicken it up until you get the styrofoam head closer to the actual width of your head. To get this project going, take the vinyl circles and hold them up where they will go on the headgear, which is over the ears and forward towards the temple. Pin them into place by pushing straight pins through them into the styrofoam head for a temporary hold while we get this headgear built. Now, using an X-Acto knife or scissors, cut a small little slice through the vinyl, positioned right about here. Do the same thing on the piece of vinyl on the other side of the head. Now, you're going to need a brown strap of some kind to create the cap of the headgear. I am using a brown suede cord because it's very durable, but it is a little bit wider than whatever they used to make her cap. Really, anything similar should work fine. Take your strap and thread it through the slit in the vinyl. This part is super simple because the way to attach this piece is to just tie it in a knot. Then thread the strap through the vinyl on the other side, knot it off, and you have the front of your headgear already. Super simple. For the back, you could just do the same as the front, but I wanted to make it fitted and flexible by adding elastic to the back strap. To do this, I measured the length of the back strap and mark it at the halfway point on the head with that pink little pin right there. Then I pull the brown strap towards the middle and cut it off just shy of the center point, pinning it onto the head to hold it temporarily. Repeat with the other side. Then I take a small strip of black elastic and pin it between the two pieces of the back strap. Now you can either hand sew this elastic into place or use a sewing machine, whichever is easier for you. And after you've got it all sewn together, you'll have a stretchy base to build up this headgear around. The next step is to find the middle point of the front strap. Pin a new strap perpendicular to that one, bring it across the length of the head, and pin it to the center of the back strap where that elastic is. Add a strap on either side of the one running down the middle and pin them into place. Remember to leave some extra headroom up there if you are going to be wearing a wig. Your head's going to be a little bit taller than usual. And now we are going to sew along all of those points where the straps meet for a good solid base construction. If you're hand sewing this, know that pushing a needle through this thick suede can be tough, but it's definitely not impossible. You may just have to muscle it a little bit. Because I have a sewing machine, it's much faster for me to just sew it that way, but definitely don't feel like you need a sewing machine to create this headgear. Sewing by hand is absolutely an option. You could even attach these straps with hot glue, but it would be less durable in the long run. Now let's add the 4 intersecting straps by making slits in the vinyl, threading it through, crossing it over the head, and threading it through the vinyl on the other side. Knot it and cut the excess off. This part has no sewing required because you are just tying them in place. Something to be considerate of is how big you're making the slits in the vinyl. You want them to be just big enough for the strap to go through so that you can thread it, but not too big so that the knot will hold without sliding back through the hole. And that's how you create the cap of this headgear. Now it's on to the details, which is always my favorite part of craft projects. 11's headgear is covered in wires, which I'm assuming are monitoring her brain activity while she's using her superpowers. Well, I can say with 100% certainty that ours will not do that, but it will still look very cool. Let's do some DIY! The wires on her headgear look like headphones to me, so I picked out a thin, rounded, silky white cord from the craft store that is visually similar to a headphone wire. Now using white tape, wrap it around the end of your cord, wrapping it at a slight angle so it has this swirly bottom that builds up in thickness. Use some scissors to cut off the top part of the tape so that you have a straight, even edge. Then just wrap some smaller red tape around the top of the white tape to finish off our DIY brain monitoring wires. One of my faves things about crafting stuff like this is cruising craft stores searching for supplies that look like what I need them to look like. Their intended use is totally irrelevant if they have the look, so sometimes I end up with some really funny stuff. The connection points for this headgear that I settled on are some kind of doll eyes or animal eyes or something terrifying, but they work for this project. Now it's time to bust out your hot glue gun and glue the intersecting straps of the cap to each other wherever they overlap. This is so that when you put it on, they don't slide around and lose their shape. Then drop a dot of hot glue on the top of the intersecting sections and throw that eyeball on there. These will be our connection points for the wires. Then coming out from each connection point, draw a line of hot glue and stick your homemade wire right onto the cap. Leave the wire hanging loose so that it has some freedom to move around a little bit when you move. Repeat this process all over the cap. Having as many reference pictures as possible is key for creating things from scratch. I just hit play on Netflix and took a million screenshots to get references of all of the angles of this headgear. All of the wires along the sides are glued on the vinyl side of the connection point and are pointing away from the vinyl, assuming the red tape is the top of the cord. The wires along the middle strap are glued behind the connection point facing forward. Another thing I noticed from my reference photos is that the last row in the back doesn't have red tape on it. I have no idea why, but that is just what it looks like. When I am crafting stuff like this, I usually save the very front for last because by then I've had lots of practice creating the wires and attaching them, so I can do a nice clean application for the ones that people will see the most. The last little detail that I'm going to add is 2 little metal pieces to the vinyl. To get this look, I am using half of a snap and just sewing it right on there. It's literally just half a snap, so it doesn't do anything at all. It doesn't even snap into anything. It serves no practical purpose. It's just there to mimic whatever is going on with Eleven's headgear. To put it on, you stretch it over your wig or bald cap or shaved head and pull it on. Do this carefully. While the construction is pretty solid, it is still a handmade DIY costume prop, so treat it gently if you can. The elastic really helps it go on easily and fit securely on your head, so I highly recommend adding that one little piece. It goes a long way. For the makeup, I chose the part when Eleven uses her powers to the extreme at Hawkins Lab to give us more to work with than just your average nosebleed. Starting off with brown eyeshadow, hollow out your eye sockets. Cover the inner corner, swoop it down under your eye, and smudge it up under your lower lashes too, for good measure. Then I take a red eyeshadow and add it to the inner corner and along the lower lash line to add a more dramatic effect. Then I blend the red into the brown because it's a little bright for this, it is so red. So fix that by blending or by adding more brown on top of it if it's still too intense. Now for the veins and blood vessels, I'm using Krylon's water-activated body paints in red and blue. Dilute the paint way down with water so you don't have much pigment on your brush at all, and faintly draw these blue veins on your forehead. 1 in the center and 2 on either side pointing in. When working with water-activated paint, you can wet your finger and tap on the paint to blend it out until it's an opacity that works for you. This is particularly useful when you accidentally apply way too much color. Then I add blue veins and red blood vessels all around my eyes and all over my face and on my lips. I don't really feel like these veins and blood vessels are in places that make any anatomical sense, but I am just following my reference pictures from that scene to make it as close to what her makeup looks like on the show. After I finish putting all the blue down, which is the veins, I come back in on top of that with red to make the burst blood vessels, and I also add a few little cuts here and there as well. And you know, when she uses her powers to this extreme, she bleeds a little bit more than her usual nosebleed, so I add blood dripping from both nostrils and coming out of both of my ears. And that completes Eleven's Hawkins Lab outfit look thing. Bonus props for this look are a crunched up Coke can, or a cat that you will not be using your powers against, because cats are the best. Finally, our last look in this ultimate cosplay guide, we have the Upside Down. As usual, we are DIYing this outfit, and I want to do it in a way that is accessible to as many people as possible, so instead of using expensive materials and a sewing pattern to make it from scratch, we are going to be using an all-white morph suit. Looking good, Alexa. Oh. So this material is definitely not spot on with Eleven's heavier off-white fabric, but you can get this for around $20 and it will provide you with all of the fabric you need to make this costume. I start this alteration process by cutting at least half of the legs off while still making sure to leave plenty of length to create the shorts. They don't need to be even right now. We are just cutting away the spare fabric to make it easier to work with. Then I try on the suit inside out and fold the leg fabric up until the shorts are the length I want them and are nice and straight and even. Pin them in place when you got them how you want them. Then you will sew the edge to create a nice clean hem. If you don't have a sewing machine, there are other ways of creating hems. You could use a product called Heat and Bond, which is basically like hot glue for fabric. Liquid Stitch is like white school glue for fabric. You could hand stitch it. You could even use Velcro if you're desperate. Oh, and you know what? You don't even have to hem it if you cut it really straight. You do you, and you make this costume however you want. After I've sewn the hem on there, I trim the excess fabric off and then iron the hem to flatten it out. Ironing is a step that is easy to skip, but it makes a big difference in making your edges look complete. Now I am moving on to the sleeves and neck. Like with the legs, just cut them off. We don't need them. Again, put the suit on inside out and start pinning the shape of the sleeve holes and mark how low you want the neck to go with a straight pin. I will definitely tell you that I am a make it up as you go kind of crafter, especially when it comes to clothing alterations. I have only been sewing for about a year, so this is not an expert level project by any means. It's probably not even the correct way to go about something like this, but I am here to show you how I made my costume, and this is how I did it. So, sew the edges, trim the excess fabric, and iron those sleeve holes. For the neck, I marked the shape of the neckline out with a pencil, trim the neck fabric leaving enough extra fabric to fold it over and make a hem, pin it how I want it, sew along the edge, trim the excess, and iron the neckline. That finishes up turning the original morph suit into a sleeveless one piece, so now we just need to add the little blocks to the front and back of the suit. For this task, I'm going to be using styrofoam, a knife, wax, recycled fabric from the arms and legs of the morph suit, straight pins, liquid stitch, and Velcro. Styrofoam comes in a wide variety of quality, from this nicer, easier to work with styrofoam to the packing and shipping styrofoam that breaks off into those little white balls whenever you touch it. This kind of craft styrofoam is much better for projects like this, and you can find it at your local craft store. The serrated knife and wax are going to be our tools for cutting the styrofoam into appropriately sized blocks. If you wax a knife blade with a candle or a wax melt cube thing or whatever, before you cut the styrofoam, it will cut through easier. This is especially important for the cheaper kind of styrofoam to help prevent the little styro balls from taking over your life. Using a sawing motion and even pressure, cut down through the styrofoam. I would only recommend making straight cuts if you are cutting with a knife like this. There are tools made specifically for cutting styrofoam that are better for cutting shapes, like hot wire tools, or there are even electric tools literally called styrofoam cutters. Cut 5 strips from this big styrofoam sheet and try to cut them as straight as possible. I also cut 1 or 2 extra so that I can pick the straightest pieces from the bunch, but you'll need 5 total, 4 for the front and 1 for the back. Then figure out how long you want the blocks to be. I picked the length of mine by holding the block up to the suit and marking what I thought would be a good length for my individual personal suit. Then I cut 1 block to that length and used it as a guide to measure and cut all of the rest of the blocks so they're all exactly the same size. Now we are going to wrap the styrofoam blocks up in fabric. The fabric we are going to be using is the scrap fabric that we cut off of the morph suit, so that when we're done, the blocks are exactly the same fabric as the suit and it all matches perfectly. Grab a scrap, this one is a leg, and cut down along the seam to open it up. Then lay it flat out on your workspace. If you have a preference on which side should be the front of your styrofoam block, now is the time to choose. Place the block face down on the fabric so the back side of the block is up. Cut the fabric around the shape of the styrofoam, leaving enough fabric to wrap around each side of the styrofoam block. Essentially, it's like wrapping a gift, like a birthday gift or Christmas present. So with gift wrapping in mind, put some fabric glue down along the middle of the back side of the styrofoam block. Bring one side up and stick it down in the glue. Add some more glue and pull the fabric until it's tight, sticking the other side down and pin the fabric into place while the glue dries. How to glue the sides are harder to explain if you don't know how to wrap gifts, so I'm really hoping that you do. The sides are going to be a 2-step process, so we will call this step 1. For step 1, I fold the top part down and then fold the sides in, gluing everything as I go. Pin it wherever the glue is wet to hold it all together while the glue dries and bonds to the fabric. For now, we are leaving that bottom flap just chillin' while the glue dries, but we will come back to it and make this a nice neat little wrapped styro block. After the glue has dried, it is time for step 2. Remove all of the pins from step 1. These are the pins on the side. As long as the glue is dry, it shouldn't matter that the pins are out. So now take the bottom flap and pull it up to close off the side. Glue it on there and you guessed it, pin it into place. Let it dry. I let the blocks dry overnight just to make sure everything is super completely dry, especially the blocks where I went a little bit heavy on the glue. The next day, I pull all of the pins out and bring out the Velcro. We are going to be attaching the blocks to the suit by using sticky back fabric Velcro. How you apply the Velcro to your blocks is going to depend on how much Velcro you have. If you have a bunch of it, the best way is going to be to line the entire block in 2 vertical strips so that the block will be flush against the fabric at all times. If you just Velcro the top and bottom, you can get some spacing right in there in the middle between your block and suit. So if you don't have enough Velcro to do the whole back vertically, I would do at least 3 horizontal lines, but the more the better. Sticky back Velcro is the best thing ever. It is so easy to apply. You just peel the back off like a sticker and stick one side onto your block and the other side onto your suit. I'll show you that part in a second, but first let's line all of these blocks. You'll notice that if the strip runs out is no biggie at all. You can just grab a new strip and keep going right where you left off. The reverse side of the Velcro is going to go onto the suit. In my opinion, the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and hook the Velcro to its partner on the block, then remove the backing and stick the whole thing onto the suit. To make sure it's centered, you should look at it straight on, which apparently means standing right in front of the camera. Whoops! Attach the Velcro to itself, remove the backing, and stick it on. I run my hand along the inside of the fabric to make sure it's all connected and all stuck on there really well. The front has 1 horizontal block and 3 vertical blocks. A benefit of Velcro is that it's not permanent. You could switch the blocks around or replace them if one starts looking weird or gets damaged. I ended up replacing the middle one just because I didn't like a wrinkle that was in the fabric. So it's super versatile. For the block in the back, I cut out a little path in the middle for the zipper, and otherwise it's just the same as the front. You will have to remove the back block to use the zipper, so the block will need to come off each time you take the suit on and off. For some extra little last touch detailing, I decided to add the flaps on the shoulders that hold Eleven's suit together. Since our suit is already completely constructed, these flaps for us are purely decorative, but who doesn't love the details? So I drew out 2 little half moon shapes in our leftover morph suit fabric, cut them out, hemmed and trimmed, and then sewed them straight onto the shoulders of the costume. Then I covered them in a fabric stiffener called Stiffen Quick because this material is so flexible and floppy that it just form fits back onto itself, and you can barely even see the flaps that we just spent the time making. So I stiffened them, and once they dried, I put a little piece of Velcro under each flap to lift them up and make them a tiny bit more visible. And that concludes our DIY alteration of a morph suit into an upside down suit. If you're looking for additional props for this costume, I would do a helmet-like thing, like the machine helmet guy that they put on her when she's going into the tank that takes her to the upside down. For the helmet, I got a really cheap astronaut helmet that I can take on and off whenever I want. A nice thing about this one is that it has a hole in one side of it so you can eat, drink, breathe, whatever. And then you can spin it around for a solid side for photos and stuff like that. I definitely took advantage of this hole because Halloween means candy, and y'all know how I feel about candy. Okay, last thing, upside down makeup. This makeup is super easy. It is the easiest one. It's inspired by the time she touches the Demogorgon in the upside down and it cuts to her screaming in the helmet, you know, like this. Her nosebleed is extra intense in this scene and it goes off to the side like she has been blasted by wind. So take some blood and apply it to your nostril, off to the side and back. That's it. Oh my goodness, babes, we have made it to the end of the longest video ever! I thought it would be cool to give you most of Eleven's Season 1 cosplay options in one video, without really thinking that 3 costume tutorials and a wig tutorial in one video would be 40 minutes long. Whoops! But you made it to the end and I appreciate you watching it all the way through. If you do end up making any of these costumes or being Eleven for Halloween or cosplaying her at a convention or something like that, tag me in your photos on Instagram and Twitter so that I can see your creations. Also check out Christy's incredible Demogorgon over on her channel, Raw Beauty Christy, linked in the description box below. I love you guys so much and I will see you next time. Bye!